the strongest Justice League member nobody talks about. Here's a question for you. When people talk about the strongest member of the Justice League, who usually comes to mind first? Most people immediately say Superman. And honestly, that makes sense. He's the face of DC, the symbol of raw strength, and usually the hero everyone measures against. Some people might say Wonder Woman because she's a warrior trained by the Amazons, armed with divine weapons and powerful enough to fight gods. Others might say the Flash, because once you start talking about the Speed Force, the conversation gets ridiculous very quickly. Then there's Green Lantern, Shazam, Dr. Fate, and of course, Batman with enough prep time. But there is one Justice League member who almost never gets mentioned enough. That character is Martian Manhunter. And the crazy part is, he may not always be the strongest in one single category, but he might be the most complete member of the Justice League. So why doesn't anyone talk about him that way? In this video, we're going to break down who Martian Manhunter is, how powerful he is, why his abilities are so dangerous, what his biggest weakness is, and where he truly ranks among the strongest heroes in the Justice League. Who is Martian Manhunter? Before Martian Manhunter became one of the most powerful members of the Justice League, he was J'onn J'onzz, a green Martian from the planet Mars. And that detail is important because unlike many alien superheroes who simply arrive on Earth and become protectors, J'onn's story is built around loss before it is built around power. He first appeared in Detective Comics' The Nardar 225 in 1955, which makes him one of DC's older major alien heroes. His early stories had a strong science fiction detective feel, which makes sense because his human identity, J'onn J'onzz, was usually presented as a detective. That alone already separates him from someone like Superman. J'onn was not only created to be a flying alien powerhouse, he was also written as someone who investigates, observes, studies people, and solves mysteries from the shadows. His classic origin begins with Dr. Sol Erdel, a scientist whose experimental technology accidentally brings J'onn from Mars to Earth. In many versions, this is not some grand cosmic prophecy or chosen one story. It is an accident. J'onn is pulled away from his world and stranded on a planet that is completely unfamiliar to him. And depending on the continuity, when he arrives on Earth, Mars is either already dead or soon revealed to be a world he can never truly return to. That is what makes his origin so tragic. Superman lost Krypton as a baby, so Earth became the only home he ever really knew. But J'onn is different. He remembers Mars. He remembers his culture, his people, and his family. He carries the memory of an entire civilization inside him, and that gives him a very different emotional weight. He is not just the last survivor of a dead planet in the symbolic sense. He is someone who actually lived there. He had a life before Earth. He had relationships, history, identity, and belonging. Then all of that was taken from him. And yet, instead of becoming hateful, he becomes a protector. That is one of the most important parts of J'onn's character. He has every reason to be distant from humanity and to see Earth as a place that is not his. But over time, he chooses to defend it anyway. Not because he was raised here, and not because humans are his species, but because he understands loss better than almost anyone. This is also why his personality is so different from many other powerful heroes. Martian Manhunter is usually calm, quiet, and controlled. He does not need to dominate every conversation. He does not constantly remind people how powerful he is. He often feels more like a watcher, a guardian, and a survivor trying to make sense of a second home. And that makes his detective identity even more fitting. As J'onn J'onzz, he blends into human society, studies it, and tries to understand it from the inside. He is not only hiding his alien nature, he is learning what people are, how they think, what they fear, and what they value. Why he is important to the Justice League. Martian Manhunter's importance to the Justice League is not only about how hard he can hit. That is the mistake a lot of people make when judging him. They look at the team, see Superman as the main powerhouse, Batman as the strategist, Wonder Woman as the warrior, Flash as the speedster, and Green Lantern as the cosmic weapon. Then, John gets treated like the quiet extra member in the room. But in reality, he is one of the main reasons the League works as a team. John is often portrayed as one of the founding members of the Justice League. He is not just someone who joins later because the team needs another alien hero. He is part of the Foundation. In many versions of DC history, he is there when the League becomes more than just a group of heroes standing beside each other, and he helps turn them into an actual unit. The reason he fits that role so well is because his powers are not only useful in battle, they are useful for coordination. His telepathy allows him to connect members of the League mentally, letting them communicate without speaking. That might not sound as flashy as throwing a planet-sized punch or moving faster than light, but in an actual fight, that kind of ability is insanely valuable. Imagine the Justice League dealing with a global invasion. Superman is in one country, Wonder Woman is fighting somewhere else, Flash is racing across cities, Green Lantern is in orbit, and Batman is trying to figure out the enemy's plan. Normal communication can fail, radios can be jammed, satellites can be destroyed, and enemies can intercept signals. But John can create a direct mental link. That means the team can share information instantly. They can warn each other, coordinate attacks, and stay connected even when they are physically separated. In a large-scale battle, that kind of psychic network can be the difference between a team acting together and a team falling apart. This is also why John is often called the heart and soul of the Justice League. It is not just because he is kind, although that is part of it. It is because he holds the team together in a way most members cannot. He understands people from the inside. He can sense fear, confusion, anger, grief, and manipulation. If someone is being mentally attacked or emotionally pushed toward a breaking point, John is one of the first people who might notice. That makes him extremely important against psychic threats, alien manipulation, mind control, illusions, and enemies who attack through fear instead of force. A team like the Justice League needs someone who can protect the mental battlefield, not just the physical one. And beyond the powers, John brings balance. He is powerful enough to stand beside the strongest members, but humble enough not to make everything about himself. The Justice League has powerhouses, warriors, kings, geniuses, and gods, but John is the one who connects them. His physical powers alone are already insane. Take away the telepathy for a second. Take away the shape-shifting, invisibility, intangibility, and all the strange Martian abilities that make John so difficult to deal with. Even if Martian Manhunter only had his physical powers, he would still be one of the strongest beings on Earth. That is the part people forget, because when fans talk about John, they usually jump straight to his mind powers. And yes, those are extremely important. But before we even get there, we have to acknowledge that Martian Manhunter is already operating in the same general class as the heavy hitters of the Justice League. First, there is his strength. John is not just stronger than a normal alien. He is powerful enough to stand beside Superman and Wonder Woman in battles where ordinary heroes would be completely useless. Depending on the version, Superman is usually treated as physically stronger, but the fact that John is even compared to him says everything. He can lift massive objects, fight powerful monsters, and trade blows with enemies who would tear through most superheroes in seconds. Then, there is his flight. Again, flight sounds basic in a universe filled with flying heroes, but for John, it gives him far more battlefield control. He can fight in the air, cross huge distances quickly, rescue civilians, escape ground-based traps, and operate in situations where land-bound heroes would be limited. Combine that with super strength, and he becomes a mobile powerhouse, not just a strong character standing in one place. His speed is another underrated part of his physical profile. He is obviously not on the Flash's level, and he is not usually treated as the fastest member of the league. But he is still far beyond human limits. His reactions, movement, and combat speed allow him to keep up in battles involving some of DC's most dangerous threats. That matters because strength without speed can be avoided. Jon has enough speed to make his strength actually useful against high-level opponents. Durability is where things get even more serious. Martian Manhunter can take punishment that would completely destroy most heroes. He can survive heavy impacts, energy attacks, explosions, and brutal close-range fights. He is not some fragile psychic who needs to hide behind the stronger members. He can stand on the front line himself. And even when he does get injured, Jon has regenerative abilities. That means damaging him is not always enough. You have to hurt him badly enough, fast enough, and in the right way, or he may simply recover and keep fighting. This makes him extremely hard to put down in a normal physical battle. Then there is Martian Vision. This gives him a ranged attack, often compared to heat vision or energy projection. So even if an enemy tries to keep their distance, Jon is not helpless. He can fight up close with strength, fight from above with flight, endure punishment with durability, recover through regeneration, and attack from range with his vision. And remember, this is only the simple part of what he can do. The powers that make him broken. This is where Martian Manhunter stops being just powerful and starts becoming unfair. Because if Jon only had strength, flight, durability, speed, regeneration, and Martian Vision, he would already be a top-tier Justice League member. But those abilities are only the surface. The real problem begins when you add the stranger Martian powers on top of that. The first major one is shape-shifting. Jon can change his appearance almost completely. He can alter his face, body, height, size, voice, and physical form. He can look like an ordinary human, a completely different person, a monstrous alien, or something far less recognizable. And this is not just a cosmetic trick. In many versions, his control over his body is so advanced that he can stretch, reshape, expand, compress, and adjust himself in ways that make him extremely difficult to predict in combat. That alone makes him one of the best infiltrators in DC. A normal spy needs disguises, fake documents, training, and time to get close to a target. Jon can simply become someone else. He can enter a room as a guard, a scientist, a politician, a prisoner, or even a trusted ally. And because he is also highly intelligent and observant, his disguises are not just visual. Then there is invisibility. With this, Jon does not even need to pretend to be anyone. He can simply disappear. That means he can observe enemies, move through dangerous locations, gather information, and position himself before a fight starts. Against most opponents, that is already a massive advantage. They cannot prepare for someone they cannot see. But invisibility becomes even more dangerous when combined with his other abilities. Because Jon is not a fragile stealth character. He can vanish, but if he is discovered, he is still strong enough to fight like a powerhouse. Most characters are either built for stealth or built for direct combat, but Jon can do both. And then there is intangibility. This may be one of his most broken abilities. Martian Manhunter can phase through solid matter, allowing him to pass through walls, floors, barriers, traps, and in many cases, incoming attacks. A locked room does not matter. A metal wall does not matter. A prison cell does not matter. Even many physical attacks become useless if he can simply let them pass through him. Now imagine trying to fight that. You cannot just punch him, trap him, or run from him. You cannot even be completely sure the person standing in front of you is really him. And the most frightening part is that we still have not talked about his most dangerous ability yet. Telepathy. His most dangerous ability. The ability that truly separates Martian Manhunter from most Justice League powerhouses is not his strength, his flight, or even his shape-shifting. It is his telepathy. Because once telepathy enters the conversation, the fight is no longer just physical, it is mental. And that is where Jon becomes one of the most dangerous heroes in DC. Martian Manhunter is often described as one of the strongest telepaths on Earth. That is not a small statement, because DC has plenty of psychic characters, alien minds, magical beings, and cosmic entities. But Jon is consistently treated as someone whose mental abilities are far beyond normal human comprehension. He can read minds, communicate through thought, detect nearby consciousness, sense emotions, and create psychic links between multiple people at once. That last part is especially important. Jon does not just use telepathy for himself. He can connect the Justice League mentally, allowing members to communicate silently during missions. But his telepathy can go much deeper than simple communication. Depending on the story, Jon can scan memories, detect lies, enter dreams, project illusions, block psychic attacks, and mentally stun or overwhelm opponents. That means he does not always need to wait for an enemy to reveal their plan. He can often feel when something is wrong before anyone says a word. And this is where things get scary. A character can have godlike strength, but if their mind is unprotected, Jon may not need to overpower their body. He can attack the place where their strength does not matter. That is what makes telepathy such a broken ability. It bypasses armor, muscles, and weapons, and goes straight to the brain, the memories, the emotions, and the willpower of the opponent. For many heroes, durability means they can survive punches, lasers, explosions, or cosmic energy. But mental durability is a completely different thing. A character might be able to lift a mountain and still have no real defense against someone who can reach directly into their mind. Despite all of these abilities, Jon remains humble. The reason he does not abuse this ability is because of who he is. Jon is not careless with minds, and he understands that telepathy is invasive. And that restraint is exactly why people underestimate him. If Martian Manhunter used his telepathy as aggressively as a villain would, he would be terrifying. He could break teams from the inside, expose secrets, manipulate fear, and shut down opponents before they understood what was happening. So when people ask what Jon's strongest power is, the answer is not just mind reading. It is mental control over the battlefield. Why writers have to hold him back. One of the biggest reasons Martian Manhunter feels underrated is because writers often have to be careful with him. Not because he is hard to make interesting, but because his powers can solve too many problems too quickly. That is what makes him different from a simple powerhouse. If Superman is in a scene, the story has to deal with strength. If Flash is in a scene, the story has to deal with speed. But if Jon is in a scene, the story has to deal with strength, speed, flight, shape-shifting, invisibility, intangibility, telepathy, and detective intelligence all at the same time. That creates a problem. For example, in a normal mystery plot, the heroes are supposed to investigate clues, question suspects, and slowly uncover the truth. But Jon can read minds, so unless the villain has psychic protection, alien biology, magic, or some kind of mental defense, the mystery becomes much harder to stretch. In a secret invasion story, he becomes even more useful. The Justice League has dealt with hidden aliens, disguised enemies, and shapeshifters before, and Jon should logically be one of the first people you call in those situations. He is a shapeshifter himself, so he understands disguise. He is a telepath, so he can search for hidden minds. And he is a detective, so he understands patterns. That means stories often have to give the enemy a special advantage, or keep Jon away from the center of the plot, just so the threat can continue. You can see this problem clearly in stories involving the White Martians. In JLA, New World Order, the HyperClan first appeared to the world as a new team of heroes, but they are secretly white Martians. That kind of setup works because the threat is not just physical. They are Martians too, meaning they can compete with John on a biological and psychic level. The story has to use enemies who can exist on his level, because against normal disguised enemies, John's abilities would be too effective. The same thing happens in animated versions. In Justice League and Justice League Unlimited, John is often used as the team's watchtower coordinator, communicator, or mission support, instead of being placed in every major fight. That role makes sense for him, but it also keeps him from instantly overwhelming smaller threats. If he joined every street-level mission at full power, many villains would not last very long. That is the hidden issue with Martian Manhunter. He is not just powerful in one direction. He is useful in almost every type of story. So when John is sidelined, weakened, placed in support, or matched against enemies specifically designed to counter him, it is not because he is unimportant. Most of the time, it is because he is too useful to leave unchecked. Batman's contingency plan proves how dangerous he is. Batman's contingency plan for Martian Manhunter says more about John than almost any power ranking ever could. Because Batman does not waste preparation on harmless people. He studies threats, weaknesses, and considers what would happen if someone powerful lost control, got manipulated, or turned against the world. And in Tower of Babel, that paranoia becomes the center of the entire story. The basic setup is simple, but extremely important. Batman secretly created files on how to neutralize the members of the Justice League. He did not make them because he hated the League. He made them because, from his perspective, these were some of the most powerful beings on Earth, and if any of them were ever controlled or corrupted, someone needed a way to stop them. The problem is that Ra's al Ghul steals those files and uses them against the League. And when you look at the way each hero is attacked, the plans are not random. They are specifically designed around the exact thing that makes each member vulnerable. Aquaman is targeted through his relationship with water. Green Lantern is attacked in a way that interferes with his ability to properly use the ring. Wonder Woman is trapped in a scenario that exploits her refusal to stop fighting. And Plastic Man is frozen and shattered. Each plan is personal, surgical, and built around the hero's specific nature. Then there is Martian Manhunter. John is covered with nanites that convert the outer layer of his skin into magnesium. Once he is exposed to air, his body begins to ignite. The plan is horrifying because it does not try to beat him in a normal fight. Batman does not rely on punching harder, trapping him in a cage, or throwing stronger weapons at him. He targets the one weakness that can bypass John's overwhelming versatility. That matters because it shows how dangerous Martian Manhunter is when he is fully active. Think about it. If John is not neutralized immediately, he becomes a massive problem for the entire plan. So the plan against him has to work fast. It has to hit his weakness before he can use the rest of his powers. That is the real message of Batman's contingency. Martian Manhunter is not someone you casually overpower. You do not give him time to think. You do not give him room to recover. You do not let him coordinate the team. And you do not let him enter the mental battlefield. You take him out immediately, using the most specific method possible, because if he stays in play, the situation becomes a problem for everyone involved. The answer is clear. Martian Manhunter is dangerous enough that Batman needed a custom-made biological and psychological counter just to stop him from acting. His fire weakness explained. For a character as powerful as Martian Manhunter, there has to be something that keeps him from being completely unstoppable. And for J'onn J'onzz, that weakness is fire. But this weakness is more complicated than people usually make it sound. A lot of casual fans describe it like fire is Martian Manhunter's version of kryptonite, and in a simple way, that comparison works. Superman has kryptonite, and Jon has fire. Both weaknesses are famous, both can bring down an otherwise godlike hero, and both are used by writers to create tension against characters who would normally be too hard to defeat. But there is one major difference. Kryptonite is rare, fire is not. That is what makes Jon's weakness so dangerous. You do not need a glowing alien rock from a dead planet or some impossible cosmic weapon. In many stories, a flame, an explosion, a burning building, a flamethrower, or even the threat of fire can be enough to weaken him or force him to hesitate. And depending on the version, the reason behind this weakness changes. Sometimes it is treated as a direct physical vulnerability. Fire can burn him more severely than it would burn someone with his level of durability. It can disrupt his body, weaken his control, or make him unable to use his powers properly. Other times, it is treated more like a psychological weakness. Jon is not simply hurt by fire, he is terrified by it. The sight, heat, or presence of flame can trigger deep Martian trauma. This matters because Jon is normally calm and controlled, but fire attacks the part of him that is tied to fear, memory, and survival. Some versions connect this fear to Martian history. In certain stories, the weakness is not just random biology. It is tied to the ancient nature of the Martian race and the way fire represents something buried, dangerous, or traumatic in their past. This makes the weakness more interesting because it is not just a cheap way to beat him. It becomes part of the character's lore. You can see how serious this weakness is in multiple adaptations. In the animated Justice League series, fire is repeatedly shown as something that can overwhelm Jon emotionally and physically. Even though he is one of the team's strongest members, fire can reduce him to panic in ways that normal attacks cannot. That is important because it shows the weakness does not only damage his body, it attacks his composure. And for Martian Manhunter, composure is everything. His powers require control. If fire causes him to lose focus, then it is not only hurting him directly, it is interfering with the very thing that allows him to use his abilities safely and effectively. Without that control, Jon becomes almost unfair to deal with. Fire gives writers a way to make him vulnerable without pretending he is weak. And that is the key point. It proves how powerful he is. Because when a character needs a weakness that is specific just to make fights balanced, it usually means the character is already terrifying without it. Trial by fire and furnace. What happens when Jon stops holding back? The best example of Martian Manhunter's terrifying potential is not a random power statement. It is an entire Justice League storyline built around one idea. What happens if J'onn J'onzz loses the restraint that makes him a hero? That story is JLA, Trial by Fire. In this arc, Jon tries to confront one of the deepest parts of his identity, his fear of fire. At first, that sounds like character development. A hero facing his greatest weakness, a powerful being trying to move past the one thing that has always held him back. But with Martian Manhunter, overcoming that fear does not simply make him stronger. It unlocks something much worse. That something worse is Furnace the Burning. Furnace is not just another villain wearing Jon's face. He represents an ancient, violent side of Martian nature that had been buried beneath the version of Jon we usually know. And that distinction matters. Furnace is not scary because he is completely separate from Martian Manhunter. He is scary because he shows what Jon's abilities look like without compassion, humility, or moral control. Basically, Furnace answers the question people rarely ask. What if Martian Manhunter stopped holding back? And the answer is horrifying. Furnace has the same foundation that already makes Jon dangerous. But instead of using those powers to protect people, he uses them like a weapon of mass destruction. He is aggressive, cruel, ancient, and almost impossible to deal with in a normal fight. and the Justice League struggles badly against him. That alone should tell you something. This is not a street-level villain. This is not someone who gets stopped because Batman throws one clever device, Superman lands one big punch, or Wonder Woman wins a clean duel. Furnace becomes a full league-level crisis. The entire team has to respond because Jon's own power, twisted into something predatory, is too much for one hero to handle. One of the most extreme moments comes when Furnace psychically hijacks the world's nuclear weapons and pushes the planet toward World War III. That is the kind of feat that makes Martian Manhunter's power feel different, and this is exactly why Furnace is so important for understanding Jon. The story proves that Jon's calm personality is not a sign that he lacks power. It is the thing keeping that power controlled. Most of the time, Martian Manhunter is gentle, patient, and careful because he understands how dangerous he could become. Furnace shows what happens when all of that disappears. So when people say Martian Manhunter is underrated, Trial by Fire is one of the best arguments in his favor. His kindness is not a weakness, it is the lock on the monster. Martian Manhunter versus Batman. Now that we understand how dangerous Martian Manhunter can be on his own, the next question is where he actually stands compared to the rest of the Justice League. Let's start with Batman. A fight between Martian Manhunter and Batman is one of those matchups that depends almost entirely on one question. Does Batman have preparation? Because if he does, Batman is Batman. His entire reputation is built on studying stronger beings, finding their weak points, and creating plans for situations that should be impossible. Against someone like Jon, that matters a lot. Batman is not going to try to win by throwing punches. He is going to target psychology, environment, biology, and weakness. That is why, with enough time and information, Batman can make the fight dangerous even for someone as powerful as Martian Manhunter. But without preparation, the situation changes completely. In a random encounter, Jon has almost every advantage. He is physically stronger, faster, more durable, and capable of flight. Batman is one of the greatest martial artists and tacticians in DC, but he is still human. If Jon decides to fight directly, Batman cannot match his raw strength. And even if Jon decides not to fight directly, the outcome would only be worse. He can turn invisible. He can phase through Batman's traps. He can shapeshift into someone Batman trusts. He can fly out of range. He can recover from damage. And most importantly, he can attack through telepathy. That is the part that makes this matchup so unfair. Batman's greatest weapon is his mind. His planning, discipline, memory, and tactical thinking are what allow him to stand beside gods. But Jon is one of the few Justice League members who can actually fight him on that exact battlefield. He does not need to break Batman's body first. He can pressure the mind behind the plan. Now, to be fair, Batman is not mentally weak. He has resisted fear toxins, psychological attacks, mind games, and manipulation before. He has trained his mind to an insane degree. But resisting mental pressure is different from completely stopping one of DC's strongest telepaths from entering his mind in the first place. Even if Batman can resist, Jon only needs a moment to gain an advantage. So the verdict is pretty clear. With preparation, Batman can create a realistic path to victory. But in a direct matchup with no setup, Martian Manhunter is far above him in overall power. Martian Manhunter versus Aquaman and Green Lantern. When you compare Martian Manhunter to other Justice League members, Aquaman is one of the easiest heroes to underestimate. A lot of casual viewers still think of him as the guy who talks to fish. But in the comics, that version is completely outdated. Aquaman is far stronger than people give him credit for. He has superhuman strength, extreme durability, underwater speed, royal combat training, Atlantean military experience, and command over the ocean in a way that can make him terrifying in the right environment. But that last part is also the issue. Aquaman is at his most dangerous when the battlefield favors him. If the fight is underwater, near the ocean, or connected to sea life, his advantages become much greater. On land, he is also still not at a disadvantage. But Martian Manhunter has more options in almost every environment. That does not mean Aquaman is weak. It means Jon is less dependent on the battlefield. Arthur is a king, a warrior, and a powerhouse. But Martian Manhunter is a warrior, spy, psychic, shapeshifter, and flying tank all at once. In overall versatility, Jon has the advantage. Green Lantern is a much harder comparison. A skilled Green Lantern like Hal Jordan or John Stewart brings one of the most powerful weapons in the DC universe, the Power Ring. With it, a lantern can create shields, weapons, construct armor, vehicles, massive energy attacks, and life support systems in space. The ring is limited mainly by willpower, imagination, and the user's skill. That makes Green Lantern one of the few Justice League members who can match or even surpass Jon in versatility on a cosmic scale. But the matchup becomes complicated because Jon's strongest advantage is not physical. It is mental. A Green Lantern can defend against armies, spaceships, explosions, and cosmic threats. But if Martian Manhunter gets access to the mind behind the ring, the fight changes instantly. The ring responds to willpower, and Jon is one of the characters most capable of attacking focus, thought, and emotional control. So the verdict is split. Green Lantern may have the larger cosmic ceiling, but against the person wearing the ring, Martian Manhunter has one of the most dangerous counters possible. Martian Manhunter versus Wonder Woman and Flash. Wonder Woman is where the comparison becomes less about raw abilities and more about combat skill. Because Diana is not just strong, she is trained for war. She was raised among the Amazons, has fought gods, monsters, magical enemies, alien armies, and world-ending threats. In a straight fight, she is one of the most dangerous people in the Justice League because she knows exactly how to use her strength. That is the biggest difference between her and Jon. Martian Manhunter may have more powers overall, but Wonder Woman is usually the better pure fighter. She has superior hand-to-hand training, battle instincts, divine weapons, and centuries of warrior culture behind her. With the lasso of truth, her bracelets, her sword in certain versions, and her resistance to many magical and mental attacks, Diana is not someone Jon can simply dismiss. If this becomes a direct physical fight, Wonder Woman can absolutely challenge him. Depending on the version, she might even beat him through skill, aggression, and experience. But if Jon uses his full range of abilities, the fight becomes much harder to judge. So the clean verdict is this: Wonder Woman is the better warrior, but Martian Manhunter is more versatile. Flash is a completely different problem. When people talk about broken Justice League powers, the Speed Force is always near the top of the list. The Flash is not just a guy who runs fast. In the comics, speed can become one of the most ridiculous abilities in fiction. Depending on the version, Flash can phase through matter, create speed mirages, travel through time, steal speed from others, react faster than normal thought, and hit with force far beyond what his body should logically allow. That makes him one of the hardest heroes to rank against anyone. If Flash is written at his absolute highest level, he can beat almost anybody before the fight even starts. That includes Martian Manhunter. Speed at that scale is not just movement, it becomes control over the entire pace of the battle. But Jon is not helpless here. His telepathy gives him a possible way to attack Flash without needing to physically catch him. His intangibility can help him avoid certain attacks. His durability can help him survive long enough to react. And if he can mentally disrupt Barry or Wally for even a short moment, that opening could matter. Flash probably has a higher ceiling when fully powered, but Martian Manhunter has enough strange tools to make even a speedster fight less simple than it looks. Martian Manhunter versus Superman. This is the comparison that matters most, because whenever people discuss the strongest Justice League member, Superman is almost always the first name mentioned. And to be fair, there is a reason for that. Superman is the standard. He is the character most heroes are measured against when the question is raw power. In terms of physical strength, Superman usually has the edge. He is normally portrayed as the stronger hero, the faster flyer, and the character with the higher physical ceiling. When DC needs someone to move impossible weight, survive cosmic punishment, or stand as the ultimate powerhouse, Superman is usually the one chosen for that role. His strength, speed, durability, heat vision, freeze breath, super senses, and solar-powered stamina make him one of the most complete physical heroes in comics. But this is where Martian Manhunter becomes interesting. Because the argument for John is not that he is always physically stronger than Superman. The argument is that he may be more versatile. Both characters can fly. Both have super strength. Both are extremely durable. Both have enhanced speed. Both have vision-based attacks. And both can survive situations that would instantly kill most heroes. So, if you only look at the basic superhero categories, they already overlap in a lot of ways. But then, John starts adding powers Superman does not have. Superman cannot shapeshift into another person. He cannot turn invisible. He cannot phase through walls. He cannot read minds. He cannot create psychic links between teammates. And he cannot enter someone's thoughts, detect emotional shifts, or mentally attack an enemy who is too durable to hurt physically. That is the difference. Superman is the greater raw powerhouse, but Martian Manhunter is the more complete toolkit. This is why calling Martian Manhunter a weaker Superman completely misses the point. Superman is usually stronger, but Martian Manhunter may be the harder one to prepare for. Why nobody talks about him enough. So if Martian Manhunter is this powerful, this useful, and this important to the Justice League, why does he still feel like one of the most overlooked members? The biggest reason is simple. John is not loud. Martian Manhunter is usually calm, quiet, and controlled. And because of that, he often blends into the background even when he is one of the most valuable people in the room. And it affects how fans see him. A lot of comic book power is easy to recognize visually. Superman lifting something impossible is clear. Flash running through time is clear. Green Lantern creating a giant construct is clear. And Wonder Woman fighting a god is clear. But John's greatest strengths are often quieter. He connects the team, reads the battlefield, senses danger, protects minds, and notices emotional shifts. Those things are powerful, but they are not always as instantly memorable as a giant punch or a huge explosion. Another reason is that his power set is difficult to summarize. Most heroes have one clear identity. Batman is the detective, Flash is the speedster, Aquaman is the king of Atlantis. Green Lantern has the ring, but Martian Manhunter is harder to reduce to one sentence. He is an alien survivor, a detective, a telepath, a shapeshifter, a powerhouse, a psychic communicator, and a founding League member all at once. That complexity makes him interesting, but it also makes him harder to market. And finally, writers often keep him away from the center of the story because he can solve too many problems. If he is used at full capacity, mysteries become shorter, invasions become easier to detect, and many villains lose their advantage far too quickly. Final verdict. So, after everything we have covered, is Martian Manhunter actually the strongest member of the Justice League? The most honest answer is this: not in every category, but maybe as the overall package. If we are talking about raw physical power, Superman probably still takes the top spot. If we are talking about pure speed, Flash is in a category of his own because the Speed Force can become completely ridiculous. If we are talking about combat skill, Wonder Woman is usually the better warrior. If we are talking about preparation and strategy, Batman still owns that conversation. And if we are talking about cosmic scale weaponry, Green Lantern's ring gives him a massive advantage. But Martian Manhunter is different because he does not need to dominate one category to be terrifying. He is all of those things at once, and that is why calling him underrated almost feels like an understatement. Martian Manhunter is one of the few Justice League members who can contribute to almost any kind of mission, whether it is a fight, an investigation, a rescue, a psychic attack, or a global crisis. But what do you think? Is Martian Manhunter secretly the most powerful member of the Justice League? Or do Superman, Flash, Wonder Woman, Green Lantern, or Batman still rank above him? Let me know in the comments. And if you enjoyed this breakdown, make sure to like, subscribe, and stay tuned for more deep dives into the most underrated powerhouses in comics.